everyone, and welcome back to Western Flavors. In our last episode, we watched as Tim Fleming collapsed from a severe cardiac event, bringing his fractured family together in a moment of terrifying crisis. Scott Cardinal, though only a veterinarian and unable to provide proper human medical care, did what he could. But Tim, stubborn and proud to the very end, refused to go to the hospital. He promised to take it easy. He promised to see a doctor. He convinced everyone that the worst had passed. But as Ty warned, Tim Fleming has never been good at keeping promises when they conflict with his pride. If you're enjoying this season, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a chapter. Today's episode is one we've been dreading, one that will change everything. Because sometimes, stubbornness doesn't just cost you time, it costs you everything. Tim Fleming woke before dawn on Friday morning, his body heavy with exhaustion but his mind already racing. Beside him, Jessica slept fitfully, her face drawn with worry, even in sleep. She'd barely closed her eyes all night, listening to every breath he took, terrified that each one might be his last. But Tim was awake now, and as the early morning light began to creep through the curtains, painting the bedroom in shades of gray and blue, his mind wasn't on rest or recovery or doctor's appointments. His mind was on the property, the ruin, the financial crisis that was drowning them, the legal battle that was bleeding them dry, the war that he'd started and now had to finish. Yesterday's collapse had been a setback, a moment of weakness, but it was behind him now. He'd rested, he'd recovered, and today was a new day. Today he would fix everything. He would go to the property himself, assess the damage, figure out what needed to be done to stop this hemorrhaging of money. He would find a solution that didn't involve surrendering to Amy and Ty. He would end this on his terms. His chest ached dully, a reminder of yesterday's warning. But Tim pushed it aside. It was just soreness, stress, nothing that would stop him from doing what needed to be done. Quietly, carefully, he slipped out of bed. Jessica stirred but didn't wake. He dressed in the darkness, pulling on jeans and a flannel shirt, his movements slow and deliberate to avoid making noise. He didn't want to wake her, didn't want to face her questions, her concerns, her inevitable insistence that he stay home and rest. He would be back before she even knew he was gone. Just a quick trip to the property, a few hours to assess the situation and make a plan, then home before breakfast. She'd never have to know. But Jessica was already awake. She'd felt the moment he left the bed, the shift in weight, the absence of warmth. She lay perfectly still in the darkness, eyes closed, listening to him dress. Every fiber of her being wanted to sit up, to turn on the light, to demand that he get back in bed and rest like he'd promised. But she knew Tim. Knew that confronting him would only make him more determined, more defiant, more likely to do something stupid to prove that he was fine, that he didn't need to be coddled, that he was still strong enough to handle anything. So she lay there, pretending to sleep, listening to her husband sneak out of their bedroom like a teenager sneaking out past curfew. She listened to his footsteps on the stairs, listened to the quiet creak of the front door opening and closing, listened to the sound of his truck starting up and pulling out of the driveway. And then she sat up in bed, turned on the light, and picked up her phone with trembling hands. She should call someone, Amy, Lou, Lisa, someone who could go after him, bring him back, make him see reason. But who? Lou was already at the lodge office, buried in legal documents, trying to salvage what was left of their case. Amy and Ty were at their own property, probably dealing with Lindy's morning routine. Lisa was at Heartland, managing the ranch that had been Jack's legacy. Everyone had their own lives, their own responsibilities, and Tim would be furious if she sent someone after him, would see it as betrayal, as proof that she didn't trust him, didn't believe in him. Maybe he really would be okay. Maybe yesterday had scared him enough that he'd actually take it easy. Maybe he'd just drive to the property, look around, and come home without doing anything strenuous. Maybe. But as Jessica sat there in the early morning light, phone in her hand, she felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. A certainty that something terrible was about to happen, that her husband's stubborn pride was about to cost them everything. She should call someone, but she didn't. And that choice, that single moment of hesitation, would haunt her for the rest of her life. Tim drove through the quiet streets of Hudson as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. It was beautiful, he noted absently. The kind of morning that reminded him why he loved Alberta, loved this land, loved this life. His chest still ached, a dull, persistent reminder of yesterday, but he ignored it. Just residual soreness, nothing to worry about. The property came into view, the old ruin that had started all of this, Jack's dying wish, Marion's memory. The house that Amy was determined to rebuild, and Tim was equally determined to stop. Except he wasn't trying to stop it anymore, was he? Yesterday, in that terrible moment when he thought he was dying, he'd realized something. Realized that the property didn't matter. The legal battle didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was family. He'd been ready to surrender, ready to withdraw from the fight, ready to let Amy have her way. But that was yesterday. That was in the grip of fear and pain and the terrible certainty of death. Today was different. Today his head was clear. And as he looked at the property, at the financial black hole it represented, he knew he couldn't just give up, couldn't just let it go. There had to be a way to fix this, a compromise, a solution that would satisfy everyone, and he was going to find it. He parked the truck and climbed out, moving slowly, carefully. His legs felt a little weak, but that was just from lying in bed all day yesterday. He'd worked the stiffness out. The morning air was cool and fresh, carrying the scent of grass and earth and possibility. Tim took a deep breath, wincing slightly at the tightness in his chest, and looked around. The ruin sat there like a judgment, half-collapsed walls, exposed beams, a foundation that was probably crumbling. And somewhere underneath all of that mess was the financial crisis that was destroying his family. The construction costs were astronomical. The legal fees were mounting. The property taxes were overdue. And the trust fund that was supposed to pay for all of this was running dry. But there had to be something he could do. Some cost he could cut. Some corner that could be trimmed. Some way to make this work without either bankrupting the family or admitting defeat to Amy. He'd start with the foundation, check the structural integrity, see if maybe some of the work Amy and Ty had planned was unnecessary, see if there was a cheaper way to accomplish the same goal. Tim walked toward the ruin, his boots crunching on the gravel. The property was quiet, peaceful, no one else was here. Amy and Ty wouldn't arrive for another hour at least. He had time. As he approached the collapsed section of wall, he noticed a pile of lumber that had been delivered earlier in the week. Heavy beams that were supposed to replace the rotted supports. Expensive materials that were eating through their budget like acid. Tim walked over to the pile, running his hand along one of the beams. Solid, high quality, and completely unnecessary if they just reinforced the existing supports instead of replacing them. That's what he'd tell Amy. Show her that there was a cheaper way, a smarter way, a compromise that would honor Jack's memory without destroying the family's finances. He just needed to move some of these beams, see what was underneath, check the existing supports, and assess whether they could be salvaged. The first beam wasn't that heavy. Tim grabbed one end and pulled. It shifted, scraping against the others. He pulled harder, muscles straining. A sharp twinge in his chest made him pause. He let go of the beam, breathing hard. Just overdid it a little. He'd pace himself. He tried again, this time bending his knees, using his legs instead of his back. The beam shifted, moved a few inches. Better. But as he straightened up, another twinge, sharper this time, more insistent. Tim ignored it. Back at the Dude Ranch, Jessica had finally made her decision. She picked up the phone and called Lou. Lou, it's Jessica. Your father left this morning, went to the property. I'm worried. Lou's voice was thick with exhaustion and stress.
He probably just wanted to check on things. He'll be back soon.
Lou, yesterday he almost died, and today he's out there alone, probably trying to move heavy materials or do construction work or God knows what. There was a long pause on the other end of the line.
Do you want me to go check on him?
Did she? Would Tim forgive her for sending Lou to babysit him? Would it make things better or worse? I don't know, maybe just, could you call him? Check in? Make sure he's not overdoing it?
I'll try, but you know, Dad, if he's determined to do something, there's no stopping him.
They both knew it was true, but Jessica needed to try. Just, please, call him.
I will.
But Lou was buried in legal documents, stressed and exhausted and barely holding herself together. She made a mental note to call her father in a few minutes, after she finished reviewing the motion her lawyer had just sent over. She never made that call. Tim had managed to move 3 of the heavy beams, clearing a path to the foundation. His chest ached continuously now, a dull pressure that was getting harder to ignore. Sweat dripped down his face despite the cool morning air. His breathing was labored, ragged. He should stop, should go home, should rest. But he was so close. Just a few more beams and he'd be able to see the foundation clearly, would be able to assess what actually needed to be done, would be able to prove that there was a cheaper way. He grabbed the 4th beam, pulled. It was heavier than the others, or maybe he was just getting tired. It barely moved. Tim adjusted his grip, planted his feet, pulled harder. The beam shifted, scraped, moved 6 inches. The pain in his chest intensified. Sharp, stabbing, like someone had driven a knife between his ribs. He let go of the beam, stumbled backward, hand going to his chest. The pain was worse than yesterday. Much worse. He should call for help, but his phone was in the truck, and the truck suddenly seemed very far away. He'd just sit down for a minute, catch his breath, the pain would pass. Tim lowered himself onto a nearby pile of lumber, breathing hard, hand pressed against his chest. The pain wasn't passing, it was getting worse. Spreading, radiating down his left arm, up into his jaw. This was bad. This was very bad. He needed help, needed to get to the truck, needed to call Jessica, call 911, call someone. Tim tried to stand, his legs wouldn't cooperate. The world tilted, spun. The morning sun suddenly too bright, too harsh. He fumbled for his phone, realized it wasn't in his pocket. Still in the truck, 20 yards away, might as well be 20 miles.
Help!
The word came out as barely a whisper. There was no one to hear it. The pain was crushing now, not just in his chest, but everywhere, his whole body screaming in protest. His heart, that stubborn, overworked, exhausted organ, finally giving up the fight. Tim slumped sideways on the pile of lumber, his vision graying at the edges. He couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but lie there as his body betrayed him. This was it. This was how it ended. Not surrounded by family, not in a hospital with doctors fighting to save him, but alone on a construction site, killed by his own stubborn pride. In his fading consciousness, memories flooded through his mind. Not the recent memories of fighting and conflict and war, but older ones, better ones. Lou and Amy as little girls racing horses through the fields of Heartland. Their laughter carried on the wind. Marion, beautiful and strong, sitting on the fence watching their daughters ride. The way she'd looked at him with love despite all his failures. Jack, that impossible old man who'd been more of a father to him than his own father ever was. The disappointment in Jack's eyes every time Tim screwed up, but also the forgiveness. Always the forgiveness. Katie and Lindy, his granddaughters. Katie growing into such a strong young woman. Lindy with her mother's gift for horses and her father's stubbornness. Jessica, his wife, the woman who'd stood by him through everything, the woman he was leaving behind. The legal battle seemed so stupid now, so pointless. What had he been fighting for? Money? Property? Pride? He'd wasted months he could have spent with his family fighting a war that didn't matter. Destroying relationships over something as meaningless as a pile of old lumber and a crumbling foundation. If he could do it over, if he could have yesterday back, he'd do it differently. He'd go to the hospital, he'd get treatment, he'd surrender the fight and focus on what actually mattered. But he'd made his choice, and now he was paying the price. Tim's last coherent thought, as the darkness closed in around him, was a simple one. I'm sorry. Sorry to Jessica for leaving her alone. Sorry to Lou and Amy for tearing them apart. Sorry to his granddaughters for not being there to watch them grow. Sorry to Jack for failing to honor his memory the right way. Sorry for being too stubborn, too proud, too stupid to accept help when it was offered. The pain receded, replaced by a strange sense of peace. The morning sun was warm on his face. The birds were singing. The property that had caused so much pain suddenly looked beautiful in the golden light. Tim Fleming's eyes closed one final time, and he was gone. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher in the sky. The morning grew warmer. The property remained quiet and peaceful. Tim's body lay where it had fallen, slumped against the pile of lumber, hand still pressed against his chest in that final futile gesture. His truck sat in the driveway, door unlocked, keys in the ignition. His phone sat on the passenger seat where he'd left it, screen dark and silent. At the Dude Ranch, Jessica tried calling him. No answer. She told herself he was probably just busy, working, phone on silent. He'd call back when he took a break. She called again an hour later. Still no answer. The cold dread in her stomach grew heavier. At the lodge office, Lou finally remembered her promise to call her father. She dialed his number, got voicemail, left a message asking him to call back and confirm he was taking it easy. Then she went back to her legal documents, convincing herself that no news was good news. At their own property, Amy and Ty worked on their section of the rebuild. Amy kept glancing at her watch, kept thinking about her father, kept remembering the look on his face yesterday when he'd promised to take it easy. Something felt wrong, but she pushed the feeling aside. Her father was fine. Jessica was with him. He was probably resting at home right now. No one knew that Tim Fleming lay dead on a construction site, his promises broken, his stubbornness finally exacting its ultimate price. Around mid-morning, Amy made a decision. The feeling of wrongness, of dread, had been growing all morning. She couldn't shake it, couldn't focus on work, couldn't stop thinking about her father.
Ty, I'm going to go check on Dad.
Ty looked up from the beam he was measuring, saw the worry on her face.
You want me to come with you?
No, stay here. I'll just swing by the dude ranch, make sure he's resting like he promised. I'll be back in an hour.
She didn't know why she felt so compelled to check on him, didn't know why the dread was so heavy in her chest. But she'd learned to trust her instincts over the years, and right now her instincts were screaming that something was wrong. Amy climbed into her truck and headed toward the dude ranch. As she drove, she tried calling her father's phone. No answer. Tried again. Straight to voicemail. The dread intensified. She arrived at the dude ranch, knocked on the door. Jessica answered, face pale and drawn. Amy, thank God. Have you heard from your father?
No. Isn't he here?
Jessica's face crumpled slightly. He left this morning, early, before dawn. Said he was going to the property. I've been calling him all morning, but he's not answering and I'm so worried and I should have stopped him, but I didn't. End.
The property? Our property? The ruin.
Yes, he wanted to assess the costs, figure out a cheaper way to do the rebuild. He promised he'd just look around and come right back. But it's been hours, and he's not answering. And after yesterday, I'm terrified that Amy didn't wait to hear the rest. She was already running back to her truck, phone in hand, calling Ty.
Ty, Dad's at the property. He went there this morning and he's not answering his phone. I'm heading there now.
I'll meet you there.
Amy drove faster than she should have, her heart pounding, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tight her knuckles were white. Please let him be okay. Please let him just be working with his phone on silent. Please let this feeling of dread be wrong. But deep down, she knew. She knew before she saw the truck in the driveway. She knew before she saw the pile of lumber that had been moved. She knew before she saw the figure slumped against the beams, still and silent and utterly lifeless. She knew her father was dead. Amy's truck screeched to a stop. She was out and running before the engine even stopped, her boots pounding on the gravel, her breath coming in sharp gasps.
Dad.
No response.
Daddy.
She reached him, fell to her knees beside him. His skin was cool to the touch. His face was peaceful but utterly still, no breath, no movement, no life.
No, 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 no. Dad?
She put her fingers to his neck, searching desperately for a pulse she knew she wouldn't find. His skin was cool, too cool. He'd been gone for hours.
Dad, please, please wake up. Please don't do this. Please.
But Tim Fleming didn't move, didn't respond, didn't wake up. Amy tried CPR anyway. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, 30 compressions, 2 breaths. Over and over, her training taking over, even though she knew it was too late. He was cold. He'd been gone for too long.
Come on, Dad. Come on. Breathe. Please breathe.
But he didn't breathe. Amy collapsed against her father's chest, her hands still pressed against him, tears streaming down her face, sobs tearing from her throat.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have come sooner. I should have checked on you. I should have.
But it was too late for should-haves. Too late for apologies. Too late for everything. Tim Fleming was gone. Ty arrived minutes later, saw Amy collapsed against her father's body, heard her sobs carrying across the property. He knew before he even got out of the truck. Knew from the way she was holding him. Knew from the sound of her grief. He called 911 anyway, gave them the address, told them there'd been a death, told them to send the coroner. Then he went to Amy, wrapped his arms around her, pulled her away from her father's body even as she fought him.
No, I can't leave him. I can't.
Amy, he's gone. He's been gone for a while. There's nothing we can do.
We have to try. We have to.
Amy?
His voice was gentle but firm, and in it, Amy heard the truth she didn't want to accept. Her father was dead, had been dead for hours, and no amount of CPR or prayer or desperate pleading would bring him back. She collapsed against Ty, sobs shaking her entire body, and Ty held her, his own tears falling silently, as they waited for the ambulance they both knew couldn't help. The call to Jessica was the hardest thing Amy had ever had to do, harder than CPR on her father's lifeless body, harder than accepting that he was gone, harder than anything.
Jessica, I'm at the property. I found Dad. I'm so sorry he's gone.
The sound Jessica made on the other end of the line wasn't quite a scream. It was something worse, something primal and broken and utterly devastated. No, he can't be. He was fine. He promised he'd take it easy. He promised.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
The call to Lou was just as terrible. Her sister's voice, thick with stress and exhaustion, answering on the first ring.
Lou, you need to come to the property. It's Dad. He collapsed. Lou, he's gone.
Silence on the other end. Then,
What do you mean gone?
He had a heart attack. I found him. I tried CPR, but he'd been gone for too long. Lou, I'm so sorry.
No, that's not. We just saw him yesterday. He was fine. He was going to take it easy. He was going to see a doctor. He was going to...
but Lou's voice broke on the last word, and Amy heard her sister's world shatter over the phone. Lisa, Katie, the rest of the family, they all had to be told, and each call was like reliving the nightmare over and over. Her father was dead. Tim Fleming, impossible, infuriating, stubborn, beloved Tim Fleming was gone, and it was his own stubborn pride that had killed him. The paramedics arrived, then the coroner, then the sheriff, because any unattended death required an investigation. They took statements, asked questions, examined the scene, examined the body. The official cause of death would be determined later, but it was obvious to everyone what had happened. Massive heart attack, brought on by physical exertion less than 24 hours after a serious cardiac event, compounded by months of stress and the refusal to seek proper medical treatment. Tim Fleming had worked himself to death, literally. The coroner gave them a timeline. Based on body temperature and rigor mortis, Tim had died around 7 or 8 that morning, had been gone for at least 3 hours before Amy found him. 3 hours. He'd lain there dead for 3 hours while his family went about their day, unaware that he was gone. While Jessica called and called, hoping he'd answer. While Lou worked on legal documents for a battle that no longer mattered. While Amy worked on their property, that nagging feeling of dread growing stronger. 3 hours of being dead before anyone even knew. The thought was unbearable. When they finally took Tim's body away, covered in a sheet, loaded onto a stretcher, driven away in the coroner's van, Amy felt something inside her break irreparably. That was her father. That shape under the white sheet. That body in the van. That was the man who'd raised her, fought with her, loved her in his impossible, complicated way, and she'd never see him alive again, never hear his voice, never get the chance to really reconcile, never get to tell him that she loved him despite everything, because Tim Fleming was gone. And this time, unlike with Ty, there would be no miraculous return, no second chances, no resurrection. This time, death was final. That concludes today's devastating episode of Heartland. Tim Fleming, stubborn, proud, impossible. Tim Fleming has paid the ultimate price for his refusal to accept help, his determination to fix everything on his own, to never show weakness, to never admit defeat, has cost him his life. The family that gathered around him yesterday, terrified of losing him, has now lost him, and they will spend the rest of their lives living with the knowledge that his death could have been prevented. That if he'd just gone to the hospital, if he'd just listened to reason, if he'd just put his family before his pride, he might still be alive. But Tim Fleming never learned how to bend. And in the end, his stubbornness didn't just cost him time or money or relationships, it cost him everything. Join us next time as the family begins to grapple with a loss that never should have happened. As Lou is consumed by guilt, blaming herself for the conflict that drove him to this, as Amy relives the horror of discovering her father's body. As Jessica, Katie, Lindy, and the rest of the family try to process that Tim Fleming is gone forever. The war between sisters is over, but the price of peace has been catastrophic. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe. Until next time, this is Western Flavors.